I hate Halloween. I've always thought of it as a silly holiday that was born more out of greed than anything else. In my opinion, Halloween is as much a holiday as Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and Father's Day. They were all created by the retail industry to sell more merchandise. The unintended consequence of this has been the desensitization of millions of people to what really matters. But that's just my opinion. As I sit at my favorite bar, enjoying a cold beer and a hamburger, I barely notice that Halloween is approaching. This will be the first anniversary of that Halloween I've been trick-or-treated, and I certainly didn't get any treats. To fully understand what happened, a little backstory is needed. 8 years ago, I married Lisa Simpson. We stood together in front of several hundred people in a beautiful church and made our vows to each other. For the next 7 years, life was idyllic. We were both in our early 20s, college-educated, and had good jobs. The first Halloween we celebrated as husband and wife was the highlight for me. Suddenly, our apartment became a center of horror. It was almost traumatic for someone like me who prefers simplicity and order in his life. The apartment turned into a Halloween celebration. Our roommates turned into ghouls, goblins, and ghosts. There were fake cobwebs hanging everywhere, and everywhere you moved, some motion-sensitive creature with flashing LED eyes was jumping, thrashing, or emitting eerie screams and moans. 3 years later, we bought our first house and moved out of an apartment. The first Halloween in our house was another highlight. My wife was completely immersed in the Halloween atmosphere. The entire front of our house suddenly became a collection of every available Halloween yard decoration. That's also when we threw our first Halloween party. Parties are not in my repertoire. I don't like crowds, and I'm not a social person. I prefer to be at home, in my own space, rather than dealing with a bunch of drunken jerks. My wife, on the other hand, finds such social events energetic and exciting. I usually go to such events and come home exhausted mentally and physically, while she comes home from the same event wound up and excited like a 2-day clock. Every year when Halloween came around, the situation escalated. The decorations became more elaborate and more expensive. The parties became more numerous and, in my opinion, more demanding and exhausting. However, I loved my wife and knew that showing even a little interest in her Halloween craze would mean a happier year. You know the drill. A happy wife means a happy life. This year, that's all changed. When I first found out about it, I thought the change was for the better. My wife still insisted on decorating the interior and exterior of the house. Once again, there were new decorations. I endeavored to get everything and arrange it according to her requirements. I fully expected to have to throw another party, but was pleasantly surprised when Lisa announced that instead of a party, we would go to a general Halloween celebration at the local convention center. She had bought VIP tickets for the event. Even the $150 per ticket seemed like a justifiable expense, since I didn't have to prepare for the party or clean up afterward. The fact that the tickets got us dinner and an open bar all night didn't dampen my enthusiasm. Since it was Halloween, of course it was a costume event. I expected to do the usual and find some cheap adult costume at the local supermarket. My wife was against it. She quickly informed me that she would take care of the costumes. When she told me this, I shrugged my shoulders and forgot about looking for costumes. 2 days before the momentous occasion, Lisa was seething with excitement. I knew she starts anticipating an event days before it happens, but even I was surprised by the level of her excitement. But if she was happy, I was happy. That year, Halloween fell on a Saturday. The party for the entire community was held on Saturday night. Lisa spent most of the day with a grin on her face and literally bouncing around our house. I was pleased. When she brought out our costumes after dinner, I was surprised. Lisa had gone all out and rented theater costumes for each of us. When she walked into the room with mine, to say I was surprised is an understatement. Holding the costume on a hanger over her shoulder, Lisa proudly displayed the full Batman costume. I knew I could pull it on. My height is 5 feet 6 inches, and I played fullback in college. I weigh about 30 pounds less now than when I played, but I'm still in great shape. The suit was lined and had a fitted bodysuit to give volume. I looked at it and smiled. It's great. It looks hot, but that shouldn't be a problem. Where's yours? I saw the wicked grin on her face. You'll see it tonight when we go to the party, and I think you're going to be sexy in that suit. I nodded, appreciating the double meaning and the look on her face. I'll put your costume in the guest room. You can change there. I'll get ready in our bedroom, no peeking. I agreed and settled back into the chair. The Dallas Cowboys were playing the Houston Oilers in their annual interstate rivalry game. I forgot about the party, watching the two teams battle. When the game was over, I headed upstairs to change for the party. The door to our bedroom was closed, and I could hear the shower running. Smirking, I headed to the guest room to put on my suit. Waiting downstairs in full Batman attire, I looked in the hallway mirror. I had to admit that the costume was gorgeous. It was authentic down to the smallest detail on the waistband. The downside was the extra padding that made the suit hot, and the heavy latex hood and mask were tight around my face and head. I decided a few drinks would ease the discomfort and make the evening much more enjoyable. Admiring myself in the mirror, I heard Lisa open our bedroom door. Turning around, I saw her coming down the stairs. Before I could even see her feet, I realized it was going to be an exciting evening. I saw a pair of tall leather boots. At least the boots looked like leather boots, with heels of at least 5, if not 6 inches. As Lisa came down the stairs, I saw a latex bodysuit that looked like it had been spray painted on. When Lisa came into view, I noticed that she was covered in latex up to the top of her head. She had a latex mask on her head and 2 long braided ponytails dangling from each side. It certainly made a difference. Lisa could not be called a miniature creature. She is almost 5 feet 11 inches tall and well built. She has large, full, firm breasts, wide hips, and long legs. Her dark brown hair is styled in a bob, so seeing her blonde was a surprise. I whistled in appreciation, and she seductively made her way toward me. You like it? What's not to like about it? Let's skip the party, go trick-or-treating, and then come back and celebrate Halloween in our own way. No way, big boy. You'll get your reward later, but tonight we're going to make the most of these tickets. I reluctantly agreed, and we headed to the convention center. The parking lot was already full. As I said, this is a community-wide event which proved to be popular. After getting our VIP tickets, we took seats at a table with 3 other couples near the dance floor and bandstand. We were only a few steps away from one of the open bars. I thought this could be a very interesting evening. We introduced ourselves to the other couples at the table. I left Lisa to get drinks. A long line had already formed at the bar closest to our table. I saw another bar in the back of the conference room where there was no line. I headed there. As I made my way through the crowd, I was surprised to find that my Batman costume was popular. I counted at least 6 other costumes just like mine. The costume renters were probably behind this holiday and making money off of it. I also noted that there were at least 5 other costumes similar to the one my wife was wearing. After dinner, I went back to the bar for another drink. While I waited my turn, a band played and the lights were dimmed. I finally had a fresh drink and returned to our table, but Lisa wasn't there. One of our table mates told me that a man dressed like a 30s gangster had asked her to dance. This was not unusual, as I am not known for my malleable nature and never objected to Lisa dancing with other men when we were out together. I sat down and turned around to look at the dance floor. As I looked around the dance floor, I saw at least 3 women on it dressed in identical outfits to my wife. One of them was easy to distinguish. She was much shorter in stature and much more corpulent than my wife, making her easy to identify. Either of the other 2 could have been my wife. From a distance, they were both tall, leggy, and clearly having a great time. The woman dancing with the short guy in the pin-up gangster costume and fedora was doing my wife's usual dance moves. I leaned back in my chair to enjoy my drink and watch the action. A couple hours into the party, I was struggling to squeeze as much as I could out of the open bar. I didn't feel drunk, just pleasantly relaxed. I suspect that despite my own beliefs, I was on my way to a massive hangover. Trying to keep a minute-by-minute eye on my wife was beyond me. She was a big girl and could take care of herself. A few times she came back to the table to sit down for a minute. The last time she was there, she drained her drink and I wanted another too. I headed to the bar, and when I came back she was gone. I sat down and put the drinks on the table. One of my table mates, a younger man, was dealing with a broken leg. He and I struck up a conversation. While we were talking, I noticed his eyes had lifted and were looking behind my back. I turned and smiled as I saw my wife approaching. This time she was sitting across from me, leaning on the table. Mildly intoxicated, all I could think about was taking her home and peeling that latex off her body. Apparently, my cognitive abilities were weaker than I thought. "Hey, Batman, you haven't done a single dance. Let's go." It wasn't unusual for my wife to talk me into dancing a few times. I took the hand she offered and stood up, walking with her to the dance floor. A slow song began, and I felt her press her latex-clad body against the soft jumpsuit. I wrapped my arms around her and we began to move in my clumsy manner. My dance moves were very reminiscent of when I was trying to tackle a 300-pound defensive lineman. I'm not the most graceful of men. The first song transitioned into a second slow song, and we continued to move together. My hands rested on her waist as I suddenly felt her hands move over mine and slide down to rest on her ass. I smiled under my mask and squeezed her sexy cheeks, making her giggle. When the song ended, she grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the bar. I ordered 2 more drinks, handing one to her. We stood at the bar and watched the others dance. I'll admit I was very thirsty, and I drained the glass quickly. I ordered another and looked at her, but she shook her head in refusal. With a new glass in my hand, I looked at her, trying to figure out her intentions. My expectation that she would find someone else to dance with turned out to be wrong. I saw the sly look in those eyes as she took my hand and led me around the bar. Pulling back the heavy curtains that covered the bar, I saw a dark room. Following her into the darkness, I found myself in an alcove where a lot of electrical equipment was stored. The next thing I felt was hands working the front of my suit. She was obviously familiar with the suit's construction. In a matter of seconds, she released the waistband and unzipped my tights. I gasped, feeling the cool air on my dignity, and then her hands released it from the suit. It didn't take her long to bring me to an ecstasy worthy of a superhero. To my surprise, she didn't say anything, just stepped out of the alcove and disappeared into the hangout. I froze in place for a moment, then adjusted my suit, put on my belt, and walked back out. Stopping at the bar, I asked the bartender to bring my usual drink as a double, and he smiled understandingly. Taking the drink, I walked back to our table with a slightly uncertain gait. After sitting alone for a while, my wife, having finished another song, returned to the dance floor. She sat down next to me and looked around. "Can I not have a drink?" "Sorry. Do you want me to get you another one?" Smiling, she leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Not for me. This party's almost over. Let's get out of here and go home." It was what I had been waiting to hear all evening. I stood up and realized I was under more influence than I thought. Lisa grabbed my hand for support. "Be careful, Batman. I may have to drive the Batmobile home." Nodding my head in agreement, I reached for my belt pouch and handed her my keys. Back at home, I quickly took off my costume and left it lying on the bed in our guest room. With the suit on, I was commando, so I walked across the hall naked. Smiling broadly, I found Lisa still working on removing the latex. If you haven't encountered a tight latex suit on a sweaty body, you can't understand what it's like. I went over to help her, and we ended up laughing as we struggled with the latex. Finally, we ended up on the bed, breathing heavily, both of us naked. I've been waiting for this ever since we found that dark corner in the conference room. Even in my state of light drowsiness, I realized something was wrong. Lisa tensed slightly and turned her head to look me straight in the eye. Tell me more. You don't remember. You came back to the table and we started dancing. After a couple slow songs, we went to get fresh drinks and ended up in that cubby hole behind the curtains at the bar. I saw a forced smile appear on her face. Did you like what happened? Hell yeah. It was one of the best satisfactions you've ever given me. Lisa rolled to the other side of the bed and stood up, putting her hands on her hips and looking down at me. That's interesting, because I didn't dance with you all night, and I certainly didn't go into dark closets with you. Let's just say things went downhill from that point on. There were tears, yelling, recriminations, and accusations. I tried my best to diffuse the situation by explaining that the woman I mistook for Lisa was wearing the same suit. I chalked up my inability to see the difference to my intoxicated state, but Lisa didn't care. I spent the rest of the night in the guest room. The next few days didn't go any better. There was no way Lisa could accept the fact that I was having sex with some strange woman. There were few excuses, and none of them made her feel any better. I tried to explain that it was just a one-time thing, a mistake. No intercourse took place, and no harm was done. To my surprise, these arguments only increased her anger. It seemed that no matter what I said, I was only making the situation worse. I suggested seeing a counselor, and in return I received a packet of divorce papers and a restraining order. The second week after the party, I started looking for an inexpensive apartment. That led me here, sitting at a bar, less than a year later, drinking a beer and eating a greasy hamburger and fries. Indigestion is the holiday for me this year. I'm single and divorced. I still can't get over how my wife reacted to the incident. It was like she exploded. She definitely blew up my world. We never spoke again after I filed the lawsuit. I tried to get her into counseling, but her attorney successfully argued that it wasn't necessary. I asked for a face-to-face meeting before signing the final papers, but she refused. To this day, I have no idea why she brought the gavel down on me so abruptly. Shit. It was just sex, and I thought it was her. I don't celebrate Halloween anymore. I was tricked once, and the treats turned out to be bitter.